Welcome to this week's edition of Tech Sales Advice. I am your host, Chris White, and this week's guest is no stranger to the pre-sales community. He is no stranger to when it comes to talking about pre-sales, but this is his first time on this particular show. So that means I am way overdue in inviting him to the show. And folks, by the way, as I've said many times, these conversations are live. These are by design, unscripted, unrehearsed, and unpredictable. Our guest today is Mr. Todd Janzen. He's the Global VP of Solutions Engineering of QBranch as part of Salesforce. We'll talk a little bit about that. And we're going to talk about the different demo types, and we're going to be talking about evolving from just giving live demos. But before we get there, my friend, Todd, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I wish I could start every Monday morning like this. Let's just start every Monday together, Chris. This would be great.
Hey man, I'm all in. I'm all in. And by the way, I sort of went a little bit outside the lines in my attire today because it's the last week of summer. And I saw this Hawaiian shirt hanging in my closet, and I thought, I have got to wear a Hawaiian shirt. And here you are, you're just a California guy. So this is just, everyday attire for you. So, by the way, we already have a few folks chiming in. Miss Jen DeFusco, someone I've gotten to know over the past couple of years. Jen, nice to see you. By the way, folks, we don't see you out there. So if you do want to say hello, I encourage you to do so. If you care to ask Todd or myself a question, please do. Todd, just for a moment, introduce yourself a little bit more broadly and introduce QBranch. Just the story behind QBranch, I think, is an interesting. I heard your intro on the Consensus podcast the other day, and I thought the background was with QBranch and why it's named QBranch was interesting. Do you mind sharing that briefly?
Yeah, I love talking about QBranch. So I'm about to celebrate 18 years with Salesforce.
Wow.
When I joined Salesforce, I was a solution engineer on the front lines. And about 3 years in, we came out with a programming language called Apex. And I was pretty miserable because I was back at my desk trying to hack Java-like code and not in front of customers. And that was the napkin idea. It was, hey, there should be a team that we can turn to do this.
Yeah.
And keep our SEs on the front line. So that was the genesis for it. We've evolved it globally over the last 18 years into many different roles. A lot of the work we do is for individual bespoke deals. And kind of the second half of QBranch is all the scale stuff. So making sure all the dev environments are top notch. Anyone, anywhere in the company can demo every product. But QBranch is a real thing in real life. If anyone's seen a James Bond movie, you kind of get the reference. But in real life, Q is short for quartermaster, and the army, the quartermaster arms the troops. It's a perfect metaphor for what we do. We are not the SE. We are behind the scenes. We are arming them with great stuff. And in the Navy, the quartermaster navigates the ship. And there's roles within QBranch that are helping our account teams and SEs navigate the biggest deals of their career. So I think one really important thing to make is that QBranch isn't separate of pre-sales. It is pre-sales. And we're just here to help keep our SEs on the front lines in front of customers because, one, that's what customers want. And two, that's what generates the revenue.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys are really the engine. You're sort of the engine, the rudder, right? You're the enabling force behind the Salesforce pre-sales army, if I can use that term. So I absolutely love it. I don't think I realized you had been there for 18 years. I have to say that that alone is an impressive statistic. So let's talk. So in this role, you have had a front seat perspective, if I can use that term, of the evolution in our profession. And one of the core things at the evolution is this notion that more and more we're doing demos that are recorded and have different purposes. And you've been talking a lot about the 6 types of demos and some of the different skills that we need to develop in order to create reusable demo assets. So let's pick this apart a little bit. Where do you want to begin? Shall we begin by just laying out the 6 demo types and making sure that that's the foundation of the conversation?
We could start there, or maybe even just zoom out a bit and just, demo automation and video. I was telling you right before the call, I was in a room full of SE leaders last week in San Francisco. A lot of them are friends and peers. One, my former boss, and I was really blown away at the entire discussion was around trying to find that silver bullet KPI to justify our existence and grow more headcount. But everything was in the context of traditional SE work, aka live demos.
Hmm.
There was very little talk about automation. It was still in the context of like, hey, how are you tracking how much time spends someone doing this and that? And ultimately, live demo was kind of the theater, was the end all be all, and I was really kind of shocked.
What do we need? What do we need to do to change our thinking as an SE pre-sales leadership community?
I think if you're not thinking about automation right now, you are behind. And
Mm.
um, it's one thing for me to say it. You don't have to take my word for it. I'll just tell you this: it's what your buyer wants.
Mm.
Like I use this example all the time. Like if I was booking a trip, vacation, I can see the Airbnb, I can book my flights, and I got to the end of that process, and it said, "Please call us to complete this, or call us to book this trip." I would be on the next website.
Well said.
And that's how our buyers think about it today. This is how we buy, right? It's not like
Yeah.
our buy isn't someone different than us, you and me.
Yeah.
So this is what people want.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I love about this is, it's interesting. Q Branch is an enabling organization within Salesforce for the pre-sales organization. But really, when we start to think in terms of automation, recorded demos, giving what our buyers want, really we are enabling the sales organization to progress deals with buyers and customers well into the process before they even need to pick up a phone, to your point, right?
Yeah. I after last week, I was really trying to think about, how to get people to flip the mindset. And I think where you have to go with this is do not think about retooling all of your existing people, because that can feel scary. I think this is kind of a net new business model within your solutions group. So I think for today's conversation, that is a healthy mindset to be like, don't think about the people, don't think about Sally and Jim and how they're going to have to retool. I mean, ideally, some people will, but I don't think you have to retool everyone. Think of this like a net new business venture, a new business model within your solutions group.
I, I absolutely love that. So Todd, and by the way, we have a few folks chiming in. Dave McCauley, good to see you, Dave, and Jen chiming in a little bit more. So, for argument's sake, let's say we have an SE leader out there who's hearing this and saying, "All right, Todd, you've convinced me. Net new business model. I need to change the way I think. Where do I even start? Where do I begin
Yeah.
here?"
There are a lot of great resources out there. The podcasts for pre-sales. There's a lot of thought leadership being shared out there. Um, I think a lot of the lens that I look through is through consensus. So we started implementing consensus 2 years ago, and so a lot of when I think of demo automation is through that product. Garen Hess, the CEO, has a phenomenal book around buyer enablement, the topic of buyer enablement. So if you don't have that book, that would be an easy, like, just go out on
Selling is
Amazon and get it right
hard,
now.
buying is harder. Yep.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of where I'm getting this, plus living through it. But if I was going to kind of fast forward people a bit, I think, and this gets a little tactical fast, but the 6 demo types, and consensus has done a lot of work around defining those. But up until hearing about the 6 demo types, I myself was, well, a demo, and I know what a harbor cruise is. I don't like those, but the rest is just demos.
Right. Right.
And there's actually a lot of different types of demos. Peter Cohen talks about the different demo types. The first one being vision,
Yep.
right? A lot of times I think a marketing department makes that video. It's very light on product. It's big on value and kind of what if, imagine if you will. And then the second one is what they call a micro demo. It's really someone's kind of first look at the product. And then there's the qualification demo, which is a little bit more of probably a deep dive. And then the fourth type, you can almost think about the sales funnel and marching down the sales funnel as they talk about these. The fourth one, and the one we're all familiar with, is the solution demo. This is not automated, it's live. You've done discovery, it's customized, it's story. That's the demo we all know and love.
Yep.
And so what I'm really saying is, like, there's 3 other demo types that we need to think about. And kind of in meeting with people, it's fascinating because people are essentially just saying, I just want to own the live solution demo in my organization. And there's 3 other demo types that our buyers want before they get to that. What are we doing to own that? Like, I mean, maybe I'm stretching here, but like the SE organizations in a company should own all demos, period. No question.
Amen.
So anyway, I'm starting to get excited, but I think
this is look, man. This is all about getting excited. I mean, if you don't get a little bit passionate and energized, I'm doing something wrong here. That's my job, is to spin you up. So just to complete the 6 demo types, and I know, by the way, it's 9 a.m. or just after 9 where Todd is. So I'm sure he's sipping on his maybe second cup of coffee. I've already got 2 in me. Vision, micro, and qualification demos. Those are really the demos up front that should lead to a solution demo, which is the demo that we all love and have been talking about and delivering for decades at this point. Now, there's 2 others. What are the other 2, just to make sure we've got the terminology correct?
Yeah, the one after solution is closing demo, or demos, and that's really where you're clarifying, maybe going real deep on a few areas just to make them comfortable.
Yep.
And the 6th type is FAQ, and actually FAQ goes all the way through the funnel. There's never a bad time for an FAQ demo.
Sure. And a moment ago, you said that you believe that pre-sales should own the demo within the organization, period, regardless of which demo we're talking about, regardless of what stage of the sales lifecycle we're talking about, which, by the way, I fundamentally agree with. So what are some of the challenges? There's the challenges of obviously implementing a tool, and we got to build a process around that. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing just in creating some of those demos to begin with?
Yeah, so when we talk about demo automation, a lot of what I've seen is just people hitting record on the demo they've been doing forever, right? The demo that we've all been doing forever, frankly.
Yeah.
And that is like handing someone a feature-length film and expecting them to watch it. And we can get into this, but let's get into this. Okay, so
let's get into it.
Yeah, so pandemic happens. My kids are on laptops all of a sudden. Like, we tried really hard to keep tech away from them, but now they're like, that's what they're learning on. So YouTube is now like in our world, trying like heck to keep them away from a mobile phone and TikTok and all that stuff. But what's crazy, like I was watching the other day, and there was like this iPhone bezel on our TV, and it was YouTube. And they were using the Roku remote to basically swipe through clips, little 90-second videos.
Yeah.
And on that phone. And so, like, even YouTube is taking what TikTok is doing, this idea of reels and shorts and clips, and it's mainstream. And so if you take that kind of on one far extreme, and you take the feature-length film on the other extreme, and actually, well, I won't talk about that analogy, but like these are very opposite ends of the spectrum, and we are not prepared to go to the other side right now.
Why not?
It's just not how we think. And maybe this is a good time to bring up this analogy. So Hamilton, the Broadway play. I haven't seen it yet, but my wife raves about it and loves it. And I will eventually see it someday. Hamilton, in its first 2 days of streaming on Disney Plus, had more views in the previous 5 years of being live in theater in front of an audience.
Wow.
So I think that's a great kind of analogy or metaphor to use with what we do is everything we do in pre-sales is kind of live Broadway stage,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And it'll always be that. And that is what we love to do. That's what we thrive to do.
Mm, for
I'm
sure.
not saying that goes away. I'm just saying we need to do that for the right deals, the right customers for the right reasons. And
Yes.
automation can help us not, get away from doing that for the wrong reasons, the wrong customers, the wrong time.
Yeah.
And so, but look, even Hamilton, this is a bad analogy because it's like, oh, I've never seen a Broadway play. Like, am I going to select that on Disney Plus and go lock in for the next 2 hours?
Probably
Right? No,
not.
this is why there's movie trailers. This is why, and
Yeah.
so we need to rethink how we record demos. And
Mm,
again, we're not trying to automate that solution demo, the live one in front of customers. And it says it in the book, do not automate, do not delegate.
right.
Like vision video, 90 seconds. Okay.
Yeah.
90 seconds or less. That is a very different type of demo than we are used to doing. Now there's some things that we've always known about that we all talk about, like tell them what you're going to talk about like right up front. I
Yep.
think that's still relevant, but we are very early days, and I'll say this: I have someone dedicated to making our consensus videos right now, and I've asked this individual to go study YouTubers, to go study TikTok. What is the science behind these videos? How are they hooking you in the first 10 seconds to make you want to watch for 3, 5, 10 minutes?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, there's my brain is going in so many different directions, by the way. So I'm trying to wrangle in all the questions and thoughts that I have. The first thought is you mentioned the importance of making sure that if we're investing time for a solution demo, which is what we're used to doing, it's well qualified, it's the right opportunity, the right situation. And what I'm hearing sort of between the lines is that these upfront demos, the vision demo, the micro demo, the qualifying demo, that's what produces opportunities that are well qualified. Those in essence are the gates, right?
Yep.
That and if they're no, part of the goal, and this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about, is the objective. Because to me, to understand these demo types, we really need to understand the objective of each one of these demo types. And to me, one of the objectives is to filter out poorly qualified or unqualified prospects, or people that look at the solution and think to themselves, actually, it's not really what I'm looking for. Great. Like we'd rather not waste our time or your time, right? So do you agree, like is understanding the objectives of these demo types, is that a key point here, Todd?
100%. And you need to do it for a couple reasons. The first one you mentioned was a gate. This is also from the book Selling is Hard, Buying is Harder. This idea of DQL, demo qualified lead.
Love that.
So there's a marketing qualified lead, essentially anyone that can go out to your website and fill out a form correctly. Well, that's a marketing qualified lead. If that lead gets flipped to a salesperson, that's a sales qualified lead. Well, why doesn't DQL exist? And I think, I talk about this in the past. It is my goal to make Salesforce a DQL company. And I think everyone should sprint as fast as you can to get DQL as part of your process. And I'll say it for one reason. Why is the most valuable resource in your sales process? Why is there not a gate in front of
that? That is a good question, my friend.
So it's gate. It's weeding out people that aren't serious, sure. But it is buyer enablement as well, right? We are trying to educate the customer. A lot of buyers right now don't want to take a meeting, especially early on in the sales process, right? Like they want to see that movie trailer and just kind of, are you in or out of my initial research?
Yeah.
So we need We need content in a video that can help them do that. And by the way, like with kind of demo automation, and especially in the world of consensus, we're getting insights. We know exactly what they watched. We know for how long, what they found interesting. So this is very different than lobbing a YouTube link over the fence and being like, I see I have 109 total views of this video this year, and that's it. And, I use the term, this is about digital discovery as well.
Yes.
And so let's say that this person has gone through vision to micro. We've qualified them. It's DQL time. Well, we actually have a lot of insight before we even go into discovery, based on what they've watched and who they forwarded to and how viral it's gone.
Yeah. I mean, we call it demo automation. It's as much discovery automation as it is demo automation, right?
It is not a one-way street. It is a two-way street.
Yeah. But by the way, Todd, I've got to just click on a few comments being made here. So Andy Pollard, I met Andy Pollard. He's going to be a guest on the show in a few weeks. He has an interesting background because he's actually cameraman with NFL Films, and he's been doing that for 15 years. And so you know, in almost NFL Films, right? It's all the brief clips. And so he did a talk actually in Silicon Slopes on, basically how do we begin to think like a TikTok, expert in terms of a solution expert giving a live demo. So Andy, it's good to see you. And the punchline, give the punchline and reverse engineer the story. And Jen is, firing away some good ideas as well. And Joel Harvey, we'll just say a quick hello to Joel. Thanks for all the comments, folks. Keep them flowing.
I love the NFL Films analogy because I woke up thinking about, for Gen X and beyond, TikTok. You're like, what's TikTok, right? It is the ESPN top 10.
That's great. I love that.
I love that.
I love that. So let's continue on. So you've been on this journey. You've implemented consensus, and their consensus is one of the sort of leading tool, if I can use the term leading tool, but certainly there are a number of other tools in the space for demo automation and creating these demo assets that can be consumed. What are some of the other significant lessons that you and your organization have learned in the past couple of years that will be beneficial to others? How can others learn from, some of the mistakes you guys have made, some of the pitfalls you've fallen into?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, trying to kind of set everyone's mind in the right spot today, and that this is kind of a net new business venture. I think one thing we tried to do was just, turn a bunch of SEs loose with very little training and just say like, hey, make some content. And it was good because we did make a lot of content and it got the ship moving. But now as I kind of go back and I'm watching some of these videos, a lot of them are not great. And I'm not, some of these are made by some of our top talent in the company, and they're not great from the perspective of, I can hear a dog barking in the background. I can hear a lawnmower. Their audio's crap. Their screenshots are blurry. They don't start with the so what up front. It's hitting record on an hour-long demo and then maybe chopping it up. And so we have no training on this, right? Like we shouldn't be surprised. And again, I'm not knocking anyone. It's like there's nothing out there. And Chris, I think this is, we started this discussion a while back, is who's going to fill that void? Who's going to come into our companies and say, right, demo automation, let's teach a handful, I didn't say all, let's teach a handful of SEs on how to do this right.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because as I was listening, in my mind, I started breaking down almost a framework. And it's interesting. You and I talked a few weeks ago, and you said, Chris, there's nobody out there talking about this stuff. Like we need to talk about this more. The first is mechanics, right? Like square one is mechanics. You've got to get a decent video, a decent audio. I finally my colleague was beating me up for not having a condenser mic. So I finally went out and got a condenser mic, for example, right? You got to have the right lighting. you've got to have decent screenshots or webcam or whatever that's going to, you need to be in a quiet room. We don't need dogs, and that it needs to be a professional. Hate to say it, but we need to create a studio in our homes if we're gonna do this right, or in our offices, right? So we got to get the mechanics right. That's number one. Number two, we need to structure the message in a way that draws people in. As you said, within the first 10 seconds, people are deciding, should I continue listening or not? Right? So we need to catch people. And I think Andy said it a moment ago, start with the punchline and then work backwards a little bit. And I think we need to understand, again, getting back to the objectives. So how are you either instructing or training your people, or how are you selecting people to take on this role?
Yeah, so we are at the beginning stages, and so we have a lot of great content, have some decent content, but now we're kind of taking a step back, saying, okay, how do we be really intentional about this and deliver it? So I would say, like, we're like a month into trying to understand the science behind some of these YouTubers. I'm not gonna name some of these YouTubers because my kids watch them and it drives me nuts. But these people live in mansions and drive Lamborghinis, and not like a white Lamborghini, like obnoxiously like fluorescent green Lamborghinis, because they have so much money, 100 million viewers. There's a secret there, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I've heard there's some content out there that you can understand why these people are successful. So we're in the middle of studying all that. And I'm hoping that we can kind of come up with the science and the formula so that we can then instruct other people in the company to say, like, your first 10 seconds has to sound like this. I'll give you an example. So field service, let's say, you were trying to get someone excited about field service software. And, maybe we're making a vision video. In the first 10 seconds, if you said, in this video, we're going to talk about how you outperform your competition 2x in the field. I'm in.
Yeah, that'll get your attention.
I'm probably going to watch at least 90 seconds of that.
That's really good.
That is very different than how a lot of us start a demo today, even a live demo.
That is really good. By the way, Todd, and Andy's chiming in. On top of teaching editing, it is crucial to teach writing for video. It is much more concise than the way we like to talk. So Andy, thanks for sharing. That's an interesting point. Have you guys considered finding people who just do some of the writing and scripting, and then other people who can take that and leverage that?
Yeah. So one of the teams in Q Branch is video, and we have copywriters, and all the videos that they are making start with copyright. It starts with text, and we work with the account team and we beat up that text. And is that word right? Is that word wrong? Oh, the CEO is on stage really talking about this. We need to use this language. And so I fully agree with that. And I would say that the individual I have making these videos right now, he is so good. He can just kind of like on the fly do this. But I think writing does need to be part of the skill set. And well, it might be some time before we can convince SEs to become writers. But as I like to tell people, it's a lot easier to change words on a page than it is code in your demo.
Indeed.
So let's write out the story. Let's beat it up with the customer. Let's beat it up with our salespeople. Yeah. And then let's build the demo.
Yeah.
Or the video in this case.
This sounds a lot like marketing to some people, I think. So what are you doing, or are you doing anything to involve marketing, particularly in the quote, the vision demos and maybe even the micro demos?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's going to be different for every company. I kind of assume that marketing should be and does produce the vision videos.
Okay.
And those are probably living on your website today and maybe behind a gate. I think it does get a little bit interesting, and for some context, the Salesforce product suite is vast. It's very big. And so where marketing might absolutely crush a Sales Cloud vision video, that next layer down of Sales Cloud for manufacturing, heavily focused on people in the field. Marketing might not be going to that level of depth. And so I think that's kind of a ripe area for solutions, because we're on the front lines. We're actually talking to those people that live in the field, work out of a truck on their phone.
Yeah.
We're probably best qualified to create those. So it's going to be different for every company, but I don't care what demo type we're talking about. SEs are still probably the best qualified to make those.
Yeah. How important is the credibility of the individual giving the demo or recording that video? Does he or she have to have some sort of presence in the market? Is it even important for them to introduce themselves?
Yeah, great question. And it's things we're playing around with. I think it's really important. And some of the videos we're playing around with, especially on the vision side, is predominantly like this, the individual talking with some intermittent, like going to a screen to kind of emphasize what they're talking about.
Interesting.
And so I think credibility is huge. And that's why, well, I'll say this, the stage presence is big. And stage presence on a video is different than live demo. And so I think this is why this isn't about converting everyone. This is about finding a select few people, because there are people that are just really naturally good on a recording and they kind of get it. And I don't know that I'm looking to take all of our enterprise SEs or distinguished SEs, which are phenomenal, and like there is no substitute with our biggest customers. I don't know if I want to take them and make them awesome on video.
Yeah. Well, and that's and this again, my suspicion is you're going to say, well, Chris, it depends on the organization and how large the organization is, et cetera. But one of the questions going through my mind was, is there going to be, or do you envision in our industry, the evolution of a role that's very specific towards creating recorded demos? And you're probably not going to find a lot of people who are both good in front of an audience and good in front of a camera without an audience.
Yeah. I think if our mindset is this is kind of a net new venture, this is a new business model in your world, you're going to probably grab someone and retool them for this job. But I would say, like, if you can convince your CRO or someone up top on funding a net new venture, it's probably something you're going to go hire. And I'll just say it because I've seen it already. Like Gen Z, walk into your company and you're like, this is what we need you to do. They will rock it.
Yeah.
Because they've been doing it their whole life.
Yeah. They're used to it, right?
They're they got the phone. They're doing this every day. And so, I think it's scary to a lot of us, but that generation, I think you'd be surprised. You hire the right person in a month, you're like, they are just cranking these things out.
Yeah. Yeah. How does this change the way account executives operate? Like we're talking a lot about the sales engineer and our role in this. What can and should account executives expect? How can and should account executives be leveraging these capabilities for their benefit and for the benefit of the organization?
Yeah. So I think KPI wise, they can experience faster sales cycles, and we've seen that firsthand. Losing faster, right? For those people that are going to waste your time, that's huge. We've seen close rates as high as 2x with some of the power teams using consensus.
Wow.
So it is very much in the favor for the salespeople to be using this. And if you ask most salespeople right now, they are feeling the pain of people not wanting to take your call. And so this is a way to say, like, hey, I know we've never spoken, but here's a customized demo. Go check this out.
Yeah,
And
it should make prospecting easier, right? It's an easier ask to click on a link than take a call. I mean, is what I'm hearing.
on their time and their terms. So, people watch these videos at 8 o'clock at night when the kids are to bed, sometimes on the weekends. And so it goes back to how we buy, how we want to research things. I don't want to talk to anyone.
Yeah.
So it really is advantageous for AEs to be using this. And I think where some of the growing pains for us was, if they can still get on an SE's calendar and the SE takes that appointment, there's going to be no reason to change and go do this other thing. So at some point, you're going to have to make this flip of like, no, we're no longer doing Harbor Cruise demos. I don't care how loud you scream.
Interesting.
There is now something you can use. We could have been talking about this 20 years ago, Chris.
Yeah.
20 years ago, we didn't have an alternative to the Harbor Cruise.
Yeah.
Now we do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it is interesting. I wonder if some of the quote older school account executives, guys like you and me who have, some gray hair and been around the block a day or two, are going to, struggle with this a little bit, maybe because they feel like they have a certain lack of control, where maybe they feel like they have more control if they can get someone on the phone, but they don't necessarily want to do that without their SE. So have you seen any of that? Have you seen some reluctance from some account executives who are just, they just prefer to have the meeting?
Yeah. And I think it comes to tenure to some degree. So people that have been in role, familiar with the products, they're maybe more reluctant than a new salesperson that's a month into this job. They barely know our products. They don't know how to speak intelligently about them. They don't have any credibility. This content is giving them that credibility. And you can apply that all the way down to the BDR, SDR level.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, this is someone who's going to be 9 months in that role and hope to get promoted to be an AE. And so what I hear time and time again is these videos are giving me credibility earlier in the cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. That's brilliant.
So, and I will say, I think, there's an enterprise use case that's very different than pulling kind of a generic video off the shelf and lobbing it in. The enterprise use case is, and I heard this from a rep just last week. I would just say she was the AE for one of the largest companies in the world. And we were basically told, we're going to have to talk to 50 different departments, X many demos, X many whatever. And she started doing the math and she's like, that is actually not even physically possible. And so kind of the enterprise use case is package up those demos, package up someone talking about the business value, package up the pricing conversation, lob it in and watch it go viral.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to admit, you've got me sort of rethinking my business. If I'm fully transparent, like, I'm realizing that, I mean, I do a lot of stuff on video, and I don't know if I hardly have any quote consumable videos for people to get an introductory idea of what I do. So in my mind, I'm realizing that I need to work on my own vision demo and, qualifying demo. And so, I may be the one out hiring a Gen X or Gen Z to help me do this. Incidentally, so someone chimed in, video recording is hard. You need to have presence so people will want to listen to what you have to say. There is a quotable quote right there. And my friend Andy Pollard chimed in, interesting thought. I've always thought TV news people who are interested in leaving that business would be great being an SE. They are consummate ad-libbers and presenters. Well said, Andy.
I'll say this, Chris. I like presenting and doing this, and I love presenting live in front of customers. Video is really hard for me. I am not great at it. And by the way, where I go to record the audio for my videos is in my walk-in closet.
Really? That's funny.
Assuming you have clothes in there, and a lot of clothes, it's perfect sound dampening material.
Good to know.
But I'm not great at video.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it definitely is a skill. I mean, it takes a little bit of time just getting used to seeing yourself on video, for crying out loud. I do this every week, and I'm still, getting used to it. But by the way, Carrie Calcy chimed in. I do have one on my Demo Fest booth. You're right, Carrie. But after hearing what Todd has said, I have to go and evaluate some of the videos that I have out there. Todd, what is this doing? What is this process doing to the first conversation that teams are having with a customer, with a prospect that is DQL'd, right? So they've been qualified, they've been demo qualified, they've been through a visionary demo, maybe a micro demo, a couple micro demos, a qualification demo. So they're now, and they're still engaged, they're interested, they want a meeting. It seems like we have to elevate our game that much more as an AE and an SE working with a customer that's this well informed. Am I guessing that right?
Yeah. Before I answer that directly, what's very cool is by the time you kind of get to the moment that you're describing, the prospect and customer is starting to use a lot of your language. They've consumed these videos probably a couple times, and so they're now coming to you speaking your product language, which also really helps facilitate discovery, because now there's not like, oh, you call it this, we call it this, which is really helpful. But I say it all the time, the hardcore SE skills are just as relevant as they were a decade ago. So proper discovery, value, story, 100%.
Absolutely.
And here's one. If we're getting air cover from the automation, right? If we're not doing harbor cruises, and again, there's some great research out there. The consensus does every single year on like percent of time your global SE spend in these categories. You're potentially freeing 20 to 30% of your SE's time up in some of these categories. So you've got this automation to provide you this air cover. In theory, you're not taking that time and going mountain biking or golfing. You're investing in the skills, right? You're great at discovery. You're great at all that stuff because you're not getting pulled into these crappy demos.
Yeah, in your demo, you have that much more time to actually create the ideally configured, ideally customized demo and story and message, et cetera. Incidentally, I'm inspired to call attention to the fact that this conversation is not being sponsored by Consensus, although I'm thinking about sending them a bill, just for the record. Because I know you're a huge fan of their software, and that's what you've implemented. Todd, if you can believe it, we've been at this for almost 45 minutes, and I feel like we're only scratching the surface here. What are some other things that SE leaders or SE maybe pre-sales enablement organizations need to consider or be aware of? Again, if they're sort of still a little bit on the sideline, maybe they're considering automation, they're considering tooling. What are some of the things that maybe we haven't touched on yet that they need to consider?
Yeah. I think you have to have this mind shift and a bit of a wake up, and so my next statements are to maybe help that out. But does your organization own live demos or all demos? And maybe you don't want to own vision demos, and you're like marketing, you own that, fine. But are you just live demos, or are you all demos? And the interesting thing about automation is that it's highly trackable, and you can connect the dots to revenue, right? Like we integrate and we know exactly what opportunities have been using automation, and that is a series of KPIs and revenue that now we are attaching to that we never have in the past. If you think about your KPIs are attached to deals where your SE showed up and did a live demo. We're now talking about, and at scale, by the way, because it's like the whole like Hamilton on Disney Plus example. These things are going out day and night without your SEs. They're not involved.
It's crazy.
People are sending links and emails. And so this idea of like, do you want your pre-sales organization to be associated with a lot more revenue than you've ever tied them to? And here's maybe an easier way to think about it. Your solutions organization does a lot of enablement of AEs. And I will just say they get zero credit for it.
So true.
Maybe I'm exaggerating, but like I've been in that role. Like, let's get everyone in the room and order pizza, and like, let's train you up on how you can do this demo. You get a lot of thank yous and no credit. Well, this is like the equivalent, but you can track everything. You're getting full credit for this.
So powerful. And how is that actually translating for you and your organization there at Salesforce? Are like, bonuses actually being tied to some of this? Like, is it actually being tied now to, people's income structures?
No. And that, I think, Adam Freeman is putting some thought around this, and is probably the thought leader here. And this is probably going to take a long time, if we're just being honest. But how would you think about someone that has created automated videos and they have 8 million views this year? And you look at the associated revenue to that versus your top SE that worked on your top accounts, closed your biggest deal, and did 15 demos this year.
Yeah.
We got to figure that out. I don't think we're anywhere close to answering that. But, and this is why maybe it's easier to think about it as like a net new department within pre-sales that is kind of like, because you can't, well, one of the revenue is going to be a lot higher than the other one. I can just tell you that. But I think it's probably unfair to lump those people in the same performance bucket.
No doubt. Yeah, no doubt. But you're right. I mean, when you suggest it's a net new business model, the more I think about it, I'm seeing the truth in that. And it's an interesting role because many of us like to say that as a sales engineer, we're sort of a mix of a lot of different things, right? We're technical, we're salesy, we need to understand customer success, we need to understand implementation, we need to understand product, we're involved in marketing, right? We've got fingers in so many different things. But as a pre-sales professional, if I can use that term, primarily responsible for creating the automated demos, or the demos that are going to be used in these demo assets and recordings that are sent out to prospects. I'm as much in a marketing or a lead generation role as I am a closing role.
I love that. And that's like sometimes a provocative question I ask solutions leaders is, what is your team doing to generate pipeline for the company? And what are you doing to usher it from the top of the funnel to the middle of the funnel? And it freaks people out because what they instantly start thinking about is getting my SEs on cold calls, getting them involved earlier in the cycle, which I think freaks a lot of us out, right? That just screams more Harbor Cruise demos.
Yeah.
And so what you just said is perfect, because times are hard right now, right? Like every day, things are flip-flopping. Are we going to a recession or are we not, right? And it's a really, really weird time. It's kind of all hands on deck on pipe creation, pipe gen.
Totally.
And a lot of SE organizations roll up to the CRO. If you went to your CRO and go, hey, I have an idea to like generate more pipe and usher it through the top of the funnel, I think they're going to be all ears.
Yeah.
But I think we have to get in that game, because if you think about, by definition, we have owned live demo.
Yeah.
We have owned live demo. Like, great job, stamp, woo, we're awesome. You need to own all demo.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
I say that because
you're right.
There's no better resource to do it, and the customers want us to do it anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and frankly, this comes back to the credibility conversation as well, right? Because frankly, a video, a demo asset, created by marketing, who may not have the the real understanding from the customer's perspective, right? And the ability to truly present or demonstrate the solution in a fully meaningful way, it comes across as marketing, right? It comes across as fluff. No disrespect to anybody in marketing, but it's just truth, right? Where if we can create assets with our credibility, right, and speak from firsthand experience, firsthand knowledge, right, but do so in a way that helps generate pipeline, then we are now involved in the pipeline generation activities without having to pick up the phone and call people, which is the one thing that anybody in pre-sales, we don't want to do that, right?
A great example of that is just the language you use. So marketing will use something broad. If they'll use your product names, right? So there's sometimes like jargon that people will understand, right? So in the field service example, they might say something like, in your mobile fleet of today, okay, great. Where the SE is like, when you're working out of the back of your truck,
right?
It's subtle,
Right.
but it makes a difference.
Total difference. Or, even, look, when I was in your shoes, right? Or speaking to a client just yesterday, right? This is what I saw last week.
Yeah.
Right. If it sounds familiar, take a look. Something of that nature, right? It's more of that firsthand knowledge, firsthand experience. So I think we're picking this apart a little bit, and you're helping me frame it in mind. But by the way, Kerry Sokolsky did a shout out for Nick Capozzi. Have you met Nick yet, Todd?
I have, and Nick is phenomenal. And I will just say he is a breath of fresh air into our industry.
Totally.
And I think, comes from a non-traditional pre-sales background, but that's what makes him a genius. And I think we need a North Star a little bit like that to be like, okay, that's a little bit of what the future looks like.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I actually spent about 48 hours with Nick on a trip from San Francisco up to Portland, and we had some good times. So yeah, Nick's great. Todd, you offered to give us an hour. I have 5 minutes left of that hour, and I want to be respectful of your time. For those of you who have hung around for the entire hour, thanks so much for joining and for all your comments. I think we have time for sort of just, a closing thought. We've talked about a lot of different things, but if you were to sort of, summarize the conversation and leave the audience thinking about this new world of demo automation, recorded demos, what would sort of be, your capstone thought on the topic?
Yeah. So do you own live demos or all demos? What's your team's role in generating pipe and driving it through the funnel? Think about this as a new venture, a new team, a new business venture. And, that probably means you're going to carve one person out and experiment with it. Or if you're lucky, pitch your CRO and get some funding for some net new people to do this. 6 demo types, get to know them. And adapt them if you have to. Like if the word qualification demo doesn't make sense in your world, call it whatever you want. But get cozy with those and get started. As scary as it is, you have to get started. And if not for anything else, this will help you retain your SEs. Right? If you're doing this right, they are not doing harbor cruise demos. You're providing that air cover. If you're marching towards DQL, this will have a direct effect on retention. I would argue most SEs probably leave their job because of the repetitive stuff.
Man,
the non-value add repetitive stuff.
That's powerful.
I mean, there's 6 reasons to do it: faster sales cycle, happier buyers, better close rates, happier SEs, right? You don't need all 6. Just pick one of those, get some conviction around it, and go for it.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, like when I started this at the beginning of the pandemic, and that's why I went down this journey, I was like, okay, we're not going to be in front of customers as much. We need some automation. How can I help SEs? And my mindset was all about the SE and giving them air cover and their sanity.
Yeah.
And I've uncovered all these other benefits that are as compelling.
That's a really noteworthy comment. And you're right. If nothing else, it's to the benefit of your SEs because and I hadn't thought about it until just now, but you're right. Most SEs leave because they're tired of giving the same damn demo day after day, right? And that's, by the way, that's the first warning sign, right?
Yeah.
If your SEs are giving the same demo day after day, week after week, like that's the red light indicator that Houston, we have a problem. We need to start automating.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Brilliant. Todd, I know you well enough to know that you're a very busy guy, but I also know that you're very willing to connect and collaborate when and where you can. Is it fair to say that you're more than happy to have people reach out to you on LinkedIn with questions, comments, observations?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just say it sometimes takes me a while. I have to like get into LinkedIn mode and kind of power through. So last Thursday, I finally connected with people from DemoFest that had reached out. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been months. So I'm somewhat awful about it, but I will eventually get to it.
Okay. Well, duly noted on all accounts. Todd, thank you so much for joining. This has been great. You and I could talk for, I think, 2 hours, but we need to practice what we preach and try to be a little bit more like the YouTuber. So that's something I still need to work on. Thank you so much for joining. If you're open to it, I am going to have you back for sure. Maybe in 6 months to continue this conversation. In the meantime, best of luck the rest of this year, and I'm sure we'll talk. And I know you're going to be in Silicon Valley for DemoFest this week, right?
Yep.
All right. So and where is that? That's in San Francisco, LA? It's
in Palo Alto, I believe.
Palo Alto. Okay. So if you can get out to DemoFest X, you can meet Todd in person. Folks, thanks for those of you who hung around. For those of you who caught the recording, if any of you care to follow these, just follow hashtag TechSalesAdvice, and you can go to techsalesadvisors.com and check out more about what we do. Todd, thank you so much. Hang around just for a minute, Todd. I'm going to give you your parting gift. To everybody else, have a good week. We'll talk to you next week. Cheers all.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye-bye.